Book 61 of 2019 was If a Lion Could Talk, How Animals Think, by Stephen Budiansky. I really enjoyed this book. It's funny actually because it was a friend from my old job who lent me this book probably like 2, maybe 3 years ago, and it's been on my shelf, like my to read shelf, which has got like 50 books on it, for all that time, and I've just kind of like put off reading it because I'm not really an animal kind of person. Like, yeah, they're nice and I'm sure they're lovely, and everything, and like, you know, like some of my friends' dogs and stuff are really cute and lovely, and you know, like the cats and stuff, but you know, I'm neither here nor there, to be honest. Like, you know, it's like a baby, they want feeding and they poo and they're a bit annoying, like, you know, I'm not really that bothered. So I'm not really bothered about how they think and stuff, but anyway, I thought I'd read it just for a bit of kind of like intellectual stimulation from a psychology text, because I've been reading a lot of books recently that are not really challenging the noggin very much, and so I really enjoyed this one. Like, it's talking about, right, I can't really pronounce this word but I'll try, anthropomorphism, which is essentially believing that, well, not believing, but almost kind of like judging an animal's cognition from the viewpoint of your own cognition. So almost like if you see an animal doing something, you attribute human qualities to the animal. So, for example, when a dog kind of like, I don't know, comes and like whines or whatever next to you, you think, oh, the dog loves me, or whatever. When in reality, the dog's probably just learned that if it does that behaviour, that it gets like a, you know, a little bit more attention from you, a little bit more affection from you, and it likes that. So it doesn't really understand the concept of loving you, but it will do that behaviour because it gets the reward that it kind of is looking for. It's kind of in a behaviour stimulus response way, it's kind of, you know, learned that behaviour without any kind of cognition going on at all. So it's very interesting to kind of view animals from that perspective, and this book is not just kind of like discussing it, it's providing kind of like studies that have been done on animals and what they thought they showed, and actually if you look at them in more detail, what they actually show or what they could actually show. It's a little bit like, you know, something having kind of face validity, and then when you actually look deeper into it, it hasn't got that construct validity, so I kind of liked it for that reason. There was a few kind of like discussions, like allusions to philosophy in the sense of it talks about the Turing test, talks about the Chinese room problem, which are both kind of like thought experiments that question, can you actually determine whether something is thinking and has cognition only by observing their overt behaviour? And the answer to that question is no, you can't really. Like, a computer will seem like a human being by its outward, you know, behaviour until it makes an error, and then you can tell. But what if it never makes an error? Like, does it actually think? Has it got cognition? Does that mean it's conscious? Like, it's kind of that kind of philosophical question. And as well, like a lot of the things that, like a lot of the studies that are done, people have presumed that animals have cognition, but when you actually look at it deeper, it's just a behaviour stimulus response. Like, for example, there was some studies where there's so many that this book discusses that I had them all like competing for attention then, but I'll go with this one because it's a bit easy for me to articulate. There was a task which required chimpanzees to categorise pictures of people and pictures of non-people, so pictures without people in. And they categorised them, and they did them very well, like accuracy rate, you know, in the 82%, which is quite good for, you know, an experiment like that. But it turned out that actually what they were categorising on was the amount of red in the picture, or something like that. I might have actually mixed two of the experiments up, but they were categorising on something else. You know, they could be categorising on brightness of images, or on kind of like, I think there was one discussion about how to judge amounts, and actually you're not looking at the amount overall, but you're looking at the spacing between the different bits of whatever the amount is. So it was a really, really interesting kind of deconstruction of experiments that have been done and findings that are purported to show animal cognition, and actually when you boil it down, it is simply just behaviourism and pattern recognition, which it's almost like it's slashing the illusion that animals have any cognition, which is quite disappointing, I guess, if you're an animal lover. You know, all these people that believe that the dog understands what sit means, when in actual fact it's just learned that sit, and in that tone that, you know, it doesn't even understand sit language, it's just a sound to it, that it's kind of, you know, there's something where it says if you say, like, I don't know, say you said like monkeys, but then you went dorkies, like it would respond in the same way, even if you changed the word, but it sounded the same, it would respond in the same way. So if you've got a dog or whatever, you try it, see if it'll sit when you say mate or whatever. So it was really interesting for that reason. And then it talks a lot about as well, when you're trying to test animals, that you've got to be very careful that you test them in relation to them as a species. So like we have a lot of kind of like bias that we are the most intelligent species because we have language, and therefore other species, because they don't have language, are not intelligent. When in actual fact we have evolved so that language is beneficial to us. That's why we have language. It benefits us as a species, but other species don't need it. Other species, oh, that's Alice that's just fallen down. But other species, they're intelligent in other ways. So for example, like the bowerbird can weave a bower very intelligently. You know, a spider can spin a web. All the kind of examples of intelligence in the animal kingdom. But what this book actually suggests is that whilst they might seem intelligent to us because we can't do them, they are actually just, you know, like hardwired or at least learned from the environment in a survival way. So they're not intelligent behaviours. The behaviour is stimulus response kind of behaviours. It doesn't imply cognition, and therefore you can't test. Oh no, that's what I was going to say. So therefore, you know, species aren't as intelligent as us. So it kind of contrasts that. But then they also said if you're going to test species, so for example, if you're going to test a chimpanzee and you're going to test a rat, and you're going to get them to, or a pigeon or whatever, and you're going to get them to, like, I don't know, like select objects or whatever, well, you know, they're not going to be able to perform in the same way, particularly as well if there's like a rat's visual system is not as developed as a chimpanzee's. So you're going to get different results there, not necessarily because of intelligence level, but because of what they're dealing with in terms of whether they have, you know, an equivalent visual system. But if you were to give the rat a similar kind of problem but adapt it so that it was more tailored towards their way of processing external stimuli, they're more dominant in olfactory. So like how they smell things, so they perform that task a lot better, and almost equivalently as intelligent as the chimpanzees when they did it that way. So you can't really compare species on similar tasks because they will perform them differently based on what they've evolved to have more ability in. And then what was the other thing that I was going to say? It's really hard now, it's down here. The other thing was that there was a question of whether or not, so there's a whole kind of chapter on language and chimpanzees using like sign language and lexigrams with Sue Savage-Rumbaugh and all like washout, and I teach all these, or I used to teach all these kind of studies, so I was aware of them anyway, but I thought it was really interesting because this, you know, Stephen Budiansky basically is just saying, you know, there's no cognition there. The chimpanzees are not thinking anything when they use these signs. It's just been learnt behaviour, often kind of prompted by the handlers, unintentionally most of the time. But animals are very good at picking up on cues in their environment, and so use those when they're learning behaviour. And there was a really good study that was done, which was where they asked chimpanzees, like, it was set up in a way where one human had like a bag on their head and they couldn't see anything, and the other human could see what was going on. I kept saying human. Other human had some, like, they could see what was going on, and the chimpanzee had to either follow the advice of the person who couldn't see anything or follow the advice of the person who could see something to get the reward. So as the person that could see it could tell them where the food was or whatever, and the person, so they're the knower, the person with the bag on the head is the guesser. And they learned after a few trials to understand that the knower knew more than the guesser. But it was only through stimulus response, it wasn't through intention, because when they did like an experiment I'm not fully remembering the experiments now, you'll have to read the book because it is really good, but it was saying something like, when someone's eyes were averted, it basically demonstrated that these chimpanzees couldn't tell theory of mind, and theory of mind is the ability to understand someone else's perspective. And the monkeys didn't demonstrate that they understood that. So whilst in the giver and knower experiment, they were very good at getting the rewards and whatever, and they seemed to pass that task, showing that they had cognition. They actually didn't, because when they varied the experiment to take this into account, they didn't demonstrate that they had it. So it was just really interesting that on the surface experiments can make it look like, you know, animals have cognition, but they don't. And then I found that very interesting to compare it to humans, because how could we ever prove that we have cognition? The only way that we know that we have cognition is ourselves, like our experience of it, and obviously our use of language. If we didn't have language and we weren't like in our own bodies, like how would we know that something was conscious? Like, you know, somebody that can't communicate with language but can only sign, would you say that they're not conscious? You wouldn't, would you? They surely they are conscious. Like, how do you ever prove that? So it's kind of like, you know, it's very difficult to investigate animal cognition, but this book kind of helps you with a lot of the fallacies, I guess, and gets you to think more critically about research, so you don't just accept that, yeah, that shows that animals can think the same as us, because his conclusion is that animals are just simply stimulus response, kind of, you know, they learn everything from their environment, but they don't have any cognition, they don't understand somebody else's perspective or somebody else's point of view. But I did find myself thinking about, you know, these animals where somebody dies and they go through grief, or like when someone, like say for example there's like a soldier in the war and then they come back and I remember like seeing some woman coming back from like Iraq or something, or Afghanistan, and her dog greeted her and her child and stuff, and the dog was so happy to kind of see her, and it was like to remember that person specifically and to have that response to them, that seemingly emotional response. Surely there's more going on there than just a behaviourist learn like angles. Maybe it's quite biased in that way, but maybe that's just me being unscientific and believing that there's something there that's not. So yeah, very, very good book. I definitely recommend that if you're interested in how animals think, and if you are an avid believer that your animal believes, your animal understands everything that you say to it, then definitely read this book, because it'll be eye-opening for you, mind-blowing. You'll probably get rid of your pet after it, jokes. So yeah, give that a read.